The rain didn't care who it touched. It hammered the neon-lit streets with the same indifference it showed everything else in this city, the glass towers that scraped the sky, the cardboard shelters pressed against brick walls, the woman kneeling on pavement so cold it burned through her jeans. Diane Milner's fingers closed around empty air. The dollar bill she'd been reaching for, the single, crumpled piece of currency that represented tonight's meal. Maybe tomorrow's too, floated just out of reach, held aloft by a man whose Rolex caught the glow of the convenience store sign above them. Mr. Sterling smiled. Not the polite smile of someone caught in an awkward moment. The cruel, leisurely smile of a man who knew exactly what he was doing and enjoyed it. Please. Diane's voice cracked. She hated the sound of it, hated the desperate edge that made her sound small, invisible. I just need what you need, Sterling said, dangling the dollar higher, like someone teasing a dog with a treat, is to learn that handouts aren't a career path. Get a job, sweetheart. The irony would have been laughable if Diane had any laughter left. She'd had a career, a promising one, Columbia Law, top 15% of her class, a position at a legal aid clinic where she actually helped people, until the scandal, until the accusation of ethics violations she didn't commit, until her name became toxic and the streets became home. Sterling pocketed the dollar bill with theatrical flair. Behind him, a sleek Mercedes idled at the curb, engine purring like a satisfied predator. His driver didn't even glance in Diane's direction. You'll thank me one day, Sterling continued, adjusting his red tie with his free hand. Tough love builds character. He turned to leave. Diane stayed on her knees, rain streaming down her face, mixing with something hotter and more bitter. She'd stopped crying weeks ago. This city had beaten that reflex out of her, but the rage remained, impotent and burning, a fire with nothing left to consume but herself. She didn't notice the black luxury sedan parked 3 spaces down. She didn't see the rear door open with the whisper-quiet precision of German engineering. She didn't hear the footsteps until they were right behind her, measured, deliberate, the sound of Italian leather on wet concrete. But Sterling heard them. He froze mid-step, his hand still on his car door. Something in the air had changed. The temperature seemed to drop 10 degrees in the space between heartbeats. The neon lights flickered. Or maybe that was just Diane's vision swimming. The man who stepped into view didn't rush. He didn't need to. Jungseok moved like smoke given form, silent, inevitable, and absolutely lethal. The tailored black suit hugged his frame with the kind of precision that cost more than most people's monthly rent. His white shirt was unbuttoned at the collar, revealing dark ink that crawled up his neck in intricate patterns. Symbols Diane didn't recognize but somehow understood. Meant power, meant blood, meant danger. His face was all sharp angles and colder beauty, the kind that made you forget to breathe. But it was his eyes that made Diane's breath catch. Obsidian, flat, empty of everything except a terrible, focused patience. He looked at Sterling the way someone might look at an insect. Give it back. Jungseok's voice was quiet, almost conversational, with the barest trace of an accent that made each word sound like a death sentence wrapped in silk. Sterling's face went through several expressions in rapid succession: confusion, irritation, recognition, fear. He settled on bravado, puffing his chest like a rooster unaware the fox had already entered the henhouse. Excuse me? This is none of your... Jungseok moved. Diane didn't see it happen. One moment he was standing 3 feet away. The next, his hand was locked around Sterling's wrist, the same wrist holding the stolen dollar. The businessman's expensive watch caught the light as Jungseok applied pressure, not violent, not yet, just enough to make Sterling's eyes go wide. The money. Jungseok's tone hadn't changed. Still quiet, still conversational. Somehow that made it worse. Give it to her, now. Do you know who I am? Sterling's voice climbed an octave. I'm the CEO of... The sound was wet, organic, wrong. Sterling's scream split the rain-soaked air as his wrist bent at an angle wrists weren't designed to bend. The dollar bill fluttered from his suddenly nerveless fingers, landing in a puddle at Diane's knees. Jungseok released him with the same casual disdain someone might show discarding a used tissue. Sterling crumpled against his Mercedes, cradling his shattered wrist, his face gone gray with shock and agony. You're nothing, Jungseok said simply. Then he turned his back on the whimpering businessman as if he'd already ceased to exist. He crouched in front of Diane, movements fluid, controlled. Up close, she could see the tattoos more clearly, a dragon's tail curling behind his ear, Korean script woven through flames. symbols of a world she'd only read about in case files and police reports. His expression didn't soften. Nothing about him was soft. But when he reached for the soaked dollar bill and pressed it into her trembling hand, his touch was surprisingly gentle. Diane Milner. Her name in his mouth sounded like a secret. You don't remember me, but I remember you. Her throat closed. How did he know her name? How? 3 years ago. East Side Legal Clinic. You defended a girl named Suji on a drug possession charge. Pro bono. You kept her out of prison. His eyes held hers, and for the first time she saw something beyond the emptiness, something that might have been gratitude if it wasn't wrapped in so much darkness. She was my sister. The world tilted. Behind them, Sterling had managed to crawl into his car, still crying, still cradling his ruined wrist. His driver peeled away from the curb, taillights disappearing into the rain-blurred night. Jungseok stood, offering his hand. You saved her life. Now I'm going to save yours. He paused, and something that wasn't quite a smile ghosted across his features. Whether you want me to or not. Diane stared at his outstretched hand. She thought about the streets, about the shelters that turned her away after 9 p.m., about the gnawing hollow in her stomach that had become her only constant companion. She thought about Sterling's face, about the casual cruelty of a world that had taken everything from her and called it justice. She thought about the way Jungseok had broken a man's wrist without raising his voice. Behind him, the black sedan waited, door still open, interior gleaming with leather and implicit threat. Diane took his hand. His grip was firm, pulling her to her feet with effortless strength. Up close, she could smell his cologne, something expensive and dark, cedar and smoke. What happens now? She asked. Jungseok's smile was the most terrifying thing she'd ever seen. A thin, cold line that held no warmth, nothing human at all. Just the promise of something inevitable. Now, he said, guiding her toward the car. We make them all pay. The door closed behind her with the finality of a vault ceiling. Through the tinted windows, the neon city blurred into streaks of color. Somewhere in that rain-soaked darkness, Sterling was probably at a hospital, explaining how a stranger had shattered his wrist over $1. He had no idea what was coming. Neither did Diane. But as the sedan glided through the streets toward whatever fortress or nightmare Jungseok called home, she realized something fundamental had shifted. She'd been kneeling in the rain, invisible, powerless, forgotten. Now she was sitting in the back of a luxury car next to the most dangerous man in the city. And God help her, for the first time in 3 years, she felt like she could breathe. Welcome to Afro Soul Storybook. And honey, you just stepped into something you can't walk away from. This isn't your safe, predictable love story. This is power and vengeance, wrapped in $1,000 suits. This is justice served cold by hands that don't ask permission. This is the collision between a woman who lost everything and a man who takes everything. Subscribe to see how this unfolds and comment where you're watching from. I will love to say hello to you, just to know how far our story is going. Because what happens when Diane discovers Sterling wasn't just cruel, he was the architect of her destruction? What happens when the debt of honor becomes something darker, something neither of them can control? Hit that like button. The game just started, and in Jungseok's world, the only rule is win. The sedan's interior smelled of leather and expensive cologne, but underneath it all, Diane caught something else, the metallic tang of danger that seemed to cling to Jungseok like a second skin. She sat rigid against the plush seat, her oversized sweater dripping onto upholstery that probably cost more than her entire former wardrobe. Jungseok made a phone call in rapid Korean, his tone clipped and businesslike. Diane didn't understand the words, but she recognized the cadence of commands being given, orders that would be followed without question. They'd barely made it 2 blocks when his phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen, and something cold flickered across his features. Driver, stop the car. The sedan glided to a halt. Through the rain-streaked window, Diane could see Sterling's Mercedes pulled over at an odd angle near a darkened storefront. The businessman was still inside, hunched over his shattered wrist. Stay here, Jungseok said, already opening his door. But Diane found herself following anyway, drawn by some morbid curiosity she couldn't name. The rain hit her immediately, colder than before. Or maybe she was just more aware of everything now, every sound, every shadow, every breath. Jungseok approached Sterling's car with that same unhurried grace. He didn't knock. He simply opened the driver's door, reached past the terrified chauffeur, and dragged Sterling out onto the pavement by his collar. Sterling hit the wet concrete hard, his injured wrist clutched against his chest. Please, I need a hospital. You need to learn a lesson. Jungseok's voice carried that same terrible quiet. He reached into Sterling's jacket pocket and extracted the crumpled dollar bill. Open your mouth. What? You wanted this so badly you'd steal it from a starving woman, so eat it. Sterling's face went from gray to white. You can't be serious. Jungseok crouched down, and the movement was predatory, precise. I'm going to count to 3. If your mouth isn't open, I'll break your other wrist, then both ankles. Then we'll see how much you enjoy taking things that don't belong to you. The businessman's mouth opened. Jungseok stuffed the dollar bill inside, forcing it past Sterling's teeth with clinical efficiency. Chew. Sterling's face contorted, tears mixing with rain, and something that might have been vomit. But he chewed. The sound was grotesque, wet, desperate, humiliating. Swallow. It took 3 tries, but Sterling managed it, his throat working convulsively. Jungseok stood, brushing imaginary dust from his suit. If I ever see you near her again, if I even hear you've said her name, they won't find enough of you to bury. Do you understand? Sterling nodded, still gagging, still crying. Jungseok walked away without another glance. His hand found the small of Diane's back, guiding her toward the sedan. She was shaking from cold or shock or the intoxicating rush of watching someone finally make Sterling suffer. She couldn't tell. She couldn't find the words. Necessary. Jungseok finished. He'll spread the word. No one will touch you now. Because they're afraid of you. Fear, he said, opening the car door for her, is the only language some people understand. Diane woke to sunlight, real sunlight, not the filtered gray she'd grown accustomed to on the streets. For a moment, disoriented and warm, she thought she'd dreamed the entire night. Then she opened her eyes. The room was enormous. All floor-to-ceiling windows and minimalist luxury. The bed beneath her felt like sleeping on a cloud. White silk sheets, probably worth more than her old security deposit, pooled around her. Her filthy clothes were gone, replaced by a plush robe that smelled faintly of lavender. She sat up too fast, and the world spun. How long had she slept? The last thing she remembered was the car ride. Jungseok making another phone call, the city lights blurring into abstract art through the tinted windows. The door opened without a knock. A woman entered, Korean, mid-30s, dressed in sleek black pants and a crisp white blouse. Her expression was professionally neutral. Miss Milner, I'm Min Seo. Mr. Yoon asked me to ensure you were comfortable. There are clothes in the closet, all your size. Breakfast is ready when you are. How did he my size? Mr. Yoon is thorough. Min Seo's lips curved slightly, not quite a smile. The bathroom is through there. Take your time. She left before Diane could ask the 100 questions crowding her throat. The bathroom was a study in marble and chrome, bigger than some apartments she'd lived in. Diane caught sight of herself in the mirror and barely recognized the woman staring back. Gaunt, hollow-eyed, hair matted despite someone's apparent attempt to clean her up while she slept. She showered until the water ran cold, watching 3 years of street grime swirl down a drain that probably cost more than most people's monthly salaries. The clothes in the closet fit perfectly designer jeans. A soft cashmere sweater in deep gray. Undergarment still in packaging. Everything exactly her size. Thorough didn't begin to cover it. This was surveillance-level knowledge. She found Jungseok in what could only be described as a war room disguised as a dining area. One wall was entirely glass, offering a view of the city that made her breath catch. They were impossibly high, above the clouds of smog and rain. The other walls held screens, some dark, others flickering with data streams and security feeds. He sat at a sleek table, drinking coffee and reading something on a tablet. He'd changed into a charcoal gray suit, his hair still damp from his own shower. The neck tattoos were visible again, dark art against pale skin. He looked up as she entered. You slept 14 hours. You've been watching me sleep? I've been watching everything. He gestured to a chair. Sit, eat, then we talk. The breakfast spread could have fed 10 people. Fresh fruit, pastries, Korean dishes she didn't recognize, but that smelled incredible. Coffee that was probably worth more per cup than she used to make in an hour. Diane's stomach growled traitorously. She sat. How do you know my clothing size? She asked, reaching for coffee just to have something to do with her hands. I know everything about you, Diane Milner. Jungseok set down his tablet. Columbia Law School, class of 2020, top 15%, specialized in criminal defense and civil rights. Took a position at Eastside Legal Clinic instead of the corporate firms that wanted you. Defended my sister, Suji, when she was arrested with her boyfriend's drugs in her bag. You proved the search was illegal, got the case dismissed, kept her record clean. Each fact landed like a stone in still water. That was 3 years ago, he continued. 6 months later, you were accused of falsifying evidence in the Morrison case. Ethics violation. Disbarred. The story made headlines for exactly 1 news cycle before everyone forgot. Diane's hands tightened around the coffee cup. I didn't falsify anything. I know. 2 words. Simple. Absolute. She looked up sharply. How could you possibly? Because I've spent 3 years looking for you. Jungseok leaned back, his dark eyes never leaving her face. After what you did for Suji, I tried to thank you. Sent flowers to your office. You returned them with a note saying you were just doing your job. I respected that. Kept my distance. Then I heard about the Morrison case. About the accusations. He pulled up something on his tablet. Turned it toward her. The screen showed documents, legal files, emails, bank records. Sterling Corp. They were the real client in the Morrison case, hidden behind shell companies and legal processes. You were getting too close to uncovering their money laundering operation, so they framed you. Paid off a witness to say you'd coached their testimony. Your supervising attorney threw you under the bus to protect the clinic's funding. You were disbarred before you could mount a proper defense. Diane's vision blurred. She'd suspected, of course. The timing was too convenient, the witness too prepared. But suspicion and proof were different animals. Why didn't you come forward? Her voice came out raw. If you knew. I didn't know until 8 months ago. My people found the paper trail. By then, you'd already disappeared into the streets. I've been looking for you ever since. His expression didn't change, but something in his eyes did. Last night wasn't chance, Diane. I have people watching Sterling. When they reported what he did to you, I was 3 blocks away within minutes. The room felt suddenly smaller. You've been stalking me. I've been trying to repay a debt. He stood, moving to the window, his back to her. In my world, debts are sacred. You saved Suji's life. That clinic was her last chance if she'd been convicted, if she'd gone to prison. He didn't finish. Didn't need to. So what now? Diane asked. You brought me here, fed me, gave me clothes. Am I supposed to thank you and disappear back into whatever hole you think I crawled out of? Jungseok turned, and the smile that crossed his face was sharp as broken glass. No. Now I'm going to give you what you really want. And what's that? Revenge. The word hung in the air between them, heavy and seductive. Sterling destroyed your life, Jungseok continued. He's been doing it to people for years, buying politicians, bribing officials, crushing anyone who threatens his empire. He thinks he's untouchable because he wears expensive suits and donates to charity. He thinks the law protects him. It does protect him, Diane said bitterly, only because you've been fighting with one hand tied behind your back. Jungseok moved closer, and she could smell his cologne again, could see the dragon tattoo that curved behind his ear. Help me destroy him. Use that brilliant legal mind to find his weak points, the cracks in his armor. I'll provide the resources, the manpower, everything you need. And when Sterling's empire falls, when he's kneeling in ruins, I'll make sure everyone knows you were innocent. I'll restore your name, your license, everything he stole from you. You're asking me to help a crime boss take down a legitimate businessman. I'm asking you to help me remove a cancer from this city. His eyes held hers. Sterling has killed people, Diane. Not directly, he's too smart for that. But through his greed, his exploitation, his willingness to destroy lives for profit. How many people like you has he ruined? How many are still suffering while he collects awards and shakes hands with mayors? She wanted to argue, wanted to say this wasn't justice, it was vengeance, it was wrong. But the words died in her throat because he was right. Sterling had destroyed her because she got too close to the truth. How many others had he crushed for the same reason? What would I have to do? Jungseok's smile widened, and for the first time it reached his eyes. What you do best. Practice law. Just without the restrictions that made you fail the first time. The transformation took 3 days. Min Seo became Diane's shadow, efficiently managing everything from additional wardrobe to setting up a private workspace. The penthouse had an entire floor dedicated to what Jungseok called operations, multiple rooms filled with technology that would make most intelligence agencies jealous. Her new office had 3 monitors, a high-speed connection to databases both legal and decidedly not, and a leather chair that cost more than her law school textbooks combined. The legal team arrived on day 2. 5 lawyers, all Korean, all impeccably dressed, all wearing the same expression of professional detachment. They didn't ask questions. They simply provided what she requested: case files, precedents, anything she needed. But it was the hackers who truly impressed her. Kwon, Jungseok's right-hand man, introduced them. Two young men, barely in their 20s, who spoke in rapid technical jargon and could apparently access any digital system in existence. Mr. Yoon acquired certain materials regarding Sterling Corp., Kwon said with the diplomatic vagueness of someone who'd said this exact phrase many times before. Everything is on the secure server. Passwords and access protocols are in your welcome packet. The materials were a treasure trove. Internal emails spanning 5 years. Financial records showing money moving through shell companies like water through a sieve. Communications between Sterling and city officials that made Diane's disbarment look like a parking ticket by comparison. She spent 16 hours on the first day just cataloging it all, her legal mind organizing the chaos into recognizable patterns. This wasn't just money laundering, it was racketeering, bribery, fraud on a scale that would make federal prosecutors salivate. Jungseok appeared around midnight, carrying 2 cups of coffee. He set one beside her keyboard without comment. "Find anything useful?" he asked. "Useful?" Diane laughed, slightly manic from exhaustion and caffeine. "I could build a RICO case that would put Sterling away for 30 years, maybe 40, if we can prove the connection to that construction worker's death in 2022. Can you prove it?" She pulled up a file. The inspector who signed off on the faulty equipment received a payment from one of Sterling's shell companies 3 days later. The paper trail is buried, but it's there. Jungseok leaned over her shoulder, studying the screen. This close, she could feel the heat of him, could see the way the tattoos on his neck disappeared beneath his collar. "Good. Keep digging. I want everything." "Why?" The question came out before she could stop it. "You could just handle Sterling your way. Why go through all this legal work?" He was quiet for a long moment. "Because Suji asked me to." Diane turned in her chair, looking up at him. "What?" "My sister. She's in graduate school now, studying social work. She wants to help people the way you helped her." His expression was unreadable. "She made me promise that if I ever found you, I would help you the right way. Not just with money or intimidation. She said you believed in the law, that you'd want justice done properly. So this is all for her? This is all a debt repaid." He straightened, his face falling back into that familiar cold mask. "Get some rest. Tomorrow things get more complicated." He was gone before she could ask what that meant. The explosion came at 3:47 a.m. Diane jerked awake to the sound of shattering glass and alarms screaming through the penthouse. Her door burst open. Kwon, wearing tactical gear and carrying a weapon that looked like it belonged in a war zone. "Stay down," he barked, moving to the window. More glass breaking, gunfire, actual gunfire echoing from somewhere below. Diane's heart hammered against her ribs as she rolled out of bed, her legal mind completely useless in the face of immediate physical danger. The bedroom door opened again. Jungseok, also armed, his face carved from stone. Blood spattered his white shirt, not his, she realized with distant detachment. "They came through the lower floors," he said calmly, like he was discussing the weather. "Sterling's people. Professional, well-equipped." He glanced at Kwon. "The south stairwell?" "Secured. 3 down, 2 retreated." "Good." Jungseok moved to Diane, grabbed her arm. Not roughly, but with absolute authority. "Come with me, now." She didn't argue. Couldn't argue. Her legs moved on autopilot as he pulled her from the room into a hallway that looked like a scene from an action film. Bullet holes in the walls, scorch marks from what might have been a flashbang grenade, 2 bodies in tactical gear that she tried very hard not to look at. Jungseok led her to what appeared to be a blank wall. His palm pressed against a hidden panel, and the wall slid open, revealing a safe room that was part bunker, part luxury suite. Inside, "What about you? I'm going to finish this." His eyes met hers, and for a moment she saw past the cold control to something burning underneath. "Sterling just made a critical mistake. He brought war to my home. He threatened what's mine. I'm not yours," Diane said. But the words came out weaker than she intended. His smile was terrible and beautiful. "Not yet." He pushed her gently but firmly into the safe room. "Stay here. Don't open the door for anyone except me or Kwon." The wall sealed shut, cutting off the sounds of chaos. Diane sank onto a leather couch, her hands shaking. Through a small monitor on the wall, she could see multiple camera feeds from throughout the penthouse. She watched Jungseok move through the chaos with lethal precision, no wasted movement, No hesitation. He wasn't just defending his home, he was hunting. The fight lasted another 20 minutes, but it felt like hours. When the last invader was subdued, not killed, she noticed, but efficiently neutralized and restrained, Jungseok walked through his destroyed penthouse, assessing damage with the clinical detachment of someone who'd seen this before. The wall opened. Kwon stood there, his tactical gear splattered with blood. All clear. 3 dead, 4 in custody. Mr. Yoon wants them interrogated immediately. Diane followed him out on shaking legs. The penthouse was a war zone, furniture overturned, bullet holes in the previously pristine walls, fire suppression foam covering one section of floor. And in the center of the main room, Jungseok sat in an armchair that had somehow survived intact, his hands folded calmly in his lap. At his feet, forced to their knees, were the 4 captured intruders. He looked up as Diane entered, and his expression softened microscopically. "Are you hurt?" "No, I'm—" She couldn't finish. What was she? Terrified? Exhilarated? Some twisted combination of both? Jungseok stood, stepping over the kneeling men like they were furniture. He approached Diane, and with surprising gentleness, touched her face, checking for injuries. She realized, "Sterling sent them to kill you," he said quietly. "He knows you're here, knows what you're doing. This means we're close. People almost died because of me. People almost died because Sterling is desperate." His hand dropped, but his eyes remained intense. "This is who he is, Diane. This is the man you've been afraid to fight. He doesn't play by rules. He doesn't care about justice or law. He cares about power and keeping it." She looked at the destroyed penthouse, at the men forced to their knees, at the blood on Jungseok's shirt. "What are you going to do to them? Find out who paid them. Get names, accounts, evidence." His smile was cold. "Then I'm going to make sure Sterling knows exactly what happens when he threatens my house." One of the kneeling men started to speak. Jungseok's hand moved faster than Diane could track, and the man's words cut off in a pained grunt. "Not you," Jungseok said pleasantly. "You don't talk until I ask you a question." He turned back to Diane. "Go back to your work. I'll handle this. I want to watch." Both Jungseok and Kwon looked at her with something like surprise. "I want to see," Diane continued, her voice steadier now. "If I'm going to be part of this, if I'm going to help you destroy Sterling, I need to understand all of it. Not just the legal papers and court filings. I need to see what happens in the dark." Jungseok studied her for a long moment. Then he smiled, and it was perhaps the first genuine expression she'd seen from him. "All right, but don't say I didn't warn you." What happened next, Diane would remember for the rest of her life, not because it was violent, though it was, but because of how efficient it was, how clinical. Jungseok didn't rage or threaten. He simply asked questions, and when he didn't get answers, people started losing things they'd miss. By dawn, they had everything. The offshore account that paid the hit, the intermediary who arranged it, the phone number that traced back to Sterling's head of security. And Diane understood something fundamental about the man who'd saved her from the rain. Jungseok wasn't just dangerous. He was precise, controlled, and absolutely ruthless when protecting what he considered his, including, apparently, her. As the sun rose over the destroyed penthouse, painting the broken glass in shades of gold and red, Diane stood at the window and made a decision. The law had failed her. The system had chewed her up and spit her out. Sterling had destroyed her life and faced no consequences. But Jungseok was offering her something the courts never could. Actual justice, delivered by hands willing to get bloody. She turned from the window. Jungseok was speaking to Kwon in rapid Korean, already planning the next move. He looked up, sensing her gaze. "I'm in," Diane said. "Whatever it takes. Let's destroy him." The smile that crossed Jungseok's face was absolutely feral. "Good, because now we go to war." The discovery came 3 days after the attack, buried in a subsection of Sterling Corp's internal communications that the hackers had flagged as potentially relevant but low priority. Diane almost missed it. She was exhausted, running on caffeine and spite, clicking through the 1,000th email when a name caught her eye. Morrison. Her hands froze on the keyboard. The Morrison case. The one that had destroyed her. She opened the email thread, dated 4 months before her disbarment. The sender was Sterling's personal attorney. The recipient was a man named David Chen, her former supervising attorney at the legal clinic. The Milner problem. David, as discussed, Miss Milner's investigation into our client's affairs has become untenable. She's requested subpoenas that would expose arrangements we'd prefer remain confidential. We're prepared to offer the clinic a substantial donation, $500,000, in exchange for her removal from the case. If that proves insufficient, we have alternative options regarding her credibility that we're willing to deploy." Diane's vision tunneled. She scrolled down, hands shaking. Chen's response: "The donation would be most welcome. However, I'm not comfortable with the alternative you mentioned. Miss Milner is an excellent attorney." Sterling's lawyer again. "We're not asking for your comfort, David. We're asking for your cooperation. The alternative will happen with or without your involvement. The only question is whether the clinic benefits from this transition or suffers alongside her." The next email was Chen's capitulation. A donation agreement, a promise to reassign Diane from the Morrison case immediately. But it didn't stop there. 2 weeks later, another thread. This one included a name that made Diane's stomach turn. Marcus Webb, the witness who'd testified that she'd coached his statement, that she'd falsified evidence. Webb has agreed to cooperate in exchange for dismissal of his outstanding warrants and $50,000. He'll testify that Milner instructed him to lie about the timeline. We've prepared documentation that will appear to corroborate his statement. The ethics board will have no choice but to investigate." She kept reading, each email another nail in the coffin of her former life. Sterling's people had orchestrated everything: the false witness, the manufactured evidence, even the leak to the press that had made her name toxic before she could mount a defense. At the bottom of the thread, one final email from Sterling himself. "Excellent work. Make sure she can never practice law again. People need to understand what happens when they interfere with my business." Diane sat back, the room spinning. It wasn't just that Sterling had framed her, she'd suspected that for years. It was the casualness of it, the cold calculation. She'd been destroyed as a warning to others. Nothing more. A message written in the ruins of her career. The office door opened. Jungseok, carrying his usual late-night coffee delivery. He took one look at her face and set the cups down. "You found something. You found something." She turned the monitor toward him without speaking. He read in silence, his expression unchanging, except for a tightening around his eyes that might have been anger. When he finished, he was quiet for a long moment. "I'm sorry," he said finally. "Don't be." Diane's voice came out flat, empty of everything except a cold clarity she'd never felt before. "This is exactly what I needed to see." "To see what?" "That you were right." She stood, meeting his eyes. "The law didn't fail me because I wasn't good enough. It failed me because men like Sterling don't play by the rules everyone else has to follow. They buy justice. They sell it. They make it whatever they need it to be. And now I want to learn how to make the law do what I need it to do." She moved closer, and Jungseok didn't step back. "You said you could teach me, that the law is a sword, not a shield. Show me." Something flickered in his dark eyes, approval, maybe, or recognition. "Are you sure? Once you cross this line, you don't come back." "I crossed the line the moment I got in your car." Diane held his gaze. "I just didn't realize it until now. The training wasn't what she expected. Jungseok didn't teach her to fight or shoot or any of the physical skills his people possessed. Instead, he taught her to think differently about the law she'd spent years studying. They spent hours in his office, surrounded by case files and legal precedents, but approaching them from angles that would have made her law professors blanch. "Here," he said, pointing to a clause in Sterling's merger agreement with a Chinese manufacturing conglomerate. "What do you see?" "Standard language about regulatory compliance," Diane answered. "Boilerplate. Look deeper. What does Sterling need for this merger to succeed?" She studied the document again. "Approval from the Committee on Foreign Investment. CFIUS review for national security concerns. And what would happen if CFIUS discovered that Sterling Corp has been using those same Chinese manufacturers to launder money through their supply chain?" Diane's breath caught. The merger would be blocked. Sterling would lose the $3.2 billion deal he's been building for 2 years. "Exactly." Jungseok pulled up another file. "Your job isn't to prosecute Sterling in a courtroom where he can buy judges and delay proceedings for years. Your job is to find the pressure points in his empire and press until something breaks. That's not how the law is supposed to work. That's exactly how the law works. You've just been taught to use it defensively." He leaned back, his eyes never leaving her face. "Sterling uses the law as a weapon every day. He files frivolous lawsuits to intimidate opponents. He exploits regulatory loopholes. He hides behind corporate structures and legal fictions. The only difference is he does it to maintain power, and we're going to do it to destroy him. Over the next 2 weeks, They built something that looked like a legal case, but felt more like a military campaign. Every document Diane drafted had dual purposes, one public and defensible, one private and devastating. She filed anonymous tips with the SEC, carefully worded to trigger investigations without revealing their source. She drafted subpoenas that looked routine but would uncover specific financial relationships. She built a web of legal actions that separately seemed minor, but together would strangle Sterling's business operations. "You're learning," Jungseok said one night, reviewing her work. "But you're still holding back." "What do you mean?" "You're still trying to be the good person, the ethical attorney who follows the rules." He stood, moving to the window that overlooked the city. "That person is dead, Diane. Sterling killed her when he destroyed your career. You need to accept that. I'm not a killer. Neither am I." He turned, and his smile was sharp. "I just understand that sometimes the only way to stop monsters is to become something they fear more." The words should have repelled her, should have sent her running back to whatever remained of her moral high ground. Instead, they settled into her bones like truth. The invitation arrived on cream-colored cardstock, embossed with gold lettering. The Riverside Foundation Annual Gala, honoring outstanding achievement in corporate leadership. This year's honoree, Marcus Sterling, Man of the Year, Diane said flatly, staring at the invitation Jungseok had placed on her desk. "They're giving him an award. Next Saturday, black tie. Every important person in the city will be there." Jungseok straightened his cuffs, the gesture casual, despite the weight of what he was saying. "Including us." "How did you get an invitation?" "I have friends in unexpected places, and I donated a substantial amount to the foundation." His smile was predatory. They were very grateful. Diane looked at the invitation. At Sterling's name printed in elegant script, the man who'd stolen her last dollar, the man who'd destroyed her career, the man who'd sent killers to Jungseok's penthouse, being honored for outstanding corporate leadership. "This is it, isn't it?" she asked quietly. "The endgame. This is where we make him fall." Jungseok moved behind her chair, his hands resting lightly on her shoulders. "Everything we've built, every legal trap we've set, it all triggers that night. The SEC investigation goes public. The Cepheus Review gets leaked. The journalists we've been feeding information publish their exposés. And you deliver the kill shot in front of everyone who matters." "What kill shot?" "The truth." His hands tightened slightly. "You're going to show them exactly who Marcus Sterling is. Not the philanthropist in the expensive suit, the predator underneath." Diane's heart hammered. "I haven't been to a gala since I lost everything. I know. Those people, they'll recognize me. They'll remember." "Good." Jungseok turned her chair so she faced him. "Let them remember the woman they abandoned, because the person walking in isn't her anymore." Minseo outdid herself. The gown was midnight blue, almost black, with a neckline that balanced elegance with power, diamond earrings that were probably real, heels that added 3 inches and made her feel like she could walk through walls. Diane barely recognized herself in the mirror. "You look like you belong," Minseo said, making final adjustments. "More importantly, you look dangerous. I feel like I'm playing dress-up. You're not." The older woman met her eyes in the mirror. "Mr. Yun doesn't waste resources on games. If you're here, dressed like this, it's because you've earned it." There was something almost maternal in her expression, brief but genuine. The penthouse elevator opened, and Jungseok stepped out. He stopped, his usual controlled expression faltering for just a moment. He wore a tuxedo that probably cost more than a car, tailored to perfection, his hair styled back to show the tattoos on his neck more prominently. He looked like what he was, wealth and danger in equal measure. "You look." He seemed to search for words, which was unusual enough to make Diane's stomach flip. Devastating. "Is that a compliment?" "It's a fact." He offered his arm. "Ready?" "No." "Good. Fear keeps you sharp." His smile was slight but real. "Just remember you're not the victim anymore. Tonight, you're the executioner." The car ride to the Riverside Hotel was silent. Diane watched the city slide past, neon and shadow, remembering the last time she'd traveled these streets. Cold, hungry, invisible. Now she sat in a luxury sedan next to the most dangerous man in the city, wearing a dress that cost more than she used to make in a month, about to walk into a room full of people who'd once known her name. The gala was exactly what she expected: crystalline chandeliers, champagne fountains, people in formal wear discussing important things in important tones. The ballroom was massive, decorated like something from a movie, with a stage at one end where Sterling would receive his award. Diane felt every eye turn to them as they entered. Not because people recognized her not yet, but because Jungseok commanded attention the way black holes commanded light. He moved through the crowd with that unhurried grace, nodding politely to people who nervously nodded back. "They're afraid of you," Diane murmured. "They're afraid of what I represent." He accepted champagne from a passing waiter, handed her a glass. Power without pretense. Most people here have done terrible things to get where they are. They just hide it better. "Is that supposed to make me feel better?" "It's supposed to make you feel prepared." He nodded toward the stage. "Look." Sterling stood near the front, surrounded by admirers, wearing a tuxedo and that same smug expression he'd worn when he stole her dollar. His wrist, Diane noticed, had healed. No sign of the break Jungseok had given him. As if sensing their attention, Sterling turned. His eyes found Jungseok first recognition and fear flickering across his face. Then they slid to Diane. The moment he recognized her was almost comical. His face went from confident to confused to pale in the space of a heartbeat. Diane smiled, raised her champagne glass in mock salute. Sterling's hand tightened on his own glass hard enough that she thought it might shatter. "He knows," Jungseok said quietly. "Good." The evening proceeded with agonizing slowness. Dinner was served something expensive that Diane barely tasted. Speeches were given, praising Sterling's charitable work, his business acumen, his contributions to the community. Each word was acid on her tongue. Finally, the moment arrived. The Foundation's president took the stage, beginning the formal introduction of this year's honoree. Jungseok's phone buzzed. He glanced at it, nodded almost imperceptibly, then looked at Diane. "It's time. You know what to do." She touched the small USB drive hidden in her clutch. Inside was everything, every email, every financial record, every piece of evidence they'd compiled, formatted into a presentation that would play automatically when inserted into the ballroom's AV system. "I know. Kwon is at the tech booth. He'll make sure the doors stay closed once it starts. No one leaves until it's finished." Diane stood, her legs steadier than she expected. "Wish me luck." "You don't need luck." Jungseok's eyes held hers. "You need rage, and you have plenty of that." She moved through the ballroom, weaving between tables, heading for the tech booth at the rear. People barely noticed her, just another beautiful woman in a room full of them. The tech booth was a small, elevated platform where the AV crew controlled lights and presentations. Kwon stood outside, dressed in venue security gear that probably wasn't authorized. "Ready?" he asked in accented English. "Ready." She climbed the steps. The technician inside looked up, confused. "Ma'am, you can't." Kwon appeared in the doorway, his presence filling the small space. The technician went quiet. "Miss Milner needs to add something to tonight's presentation," Kwon said pleasantly. "You'll cooperate." It wasn't a question. The technician nodded frantically. Diane handed over the USB drive. "Cue it after the president finishes the introduction, but before Sterling takes the stage. Full screen, maximum volume." Yes, ma'am." She returned to her table as the Foundation president reached the crescendo of his speech. "A man whose commitment to excellence and integrity has set the standard for corporate leadership. Please join me in welcoming Marcus Sterling." Applause erupted. Sterling stood, smiling, making his way toward the stage. He never made it. The ballroom lights dimmed. The large screens flanking the stage meant to show flattering photos of Sterling's achievements flickered to life with something else entirely. Email headers, financial transactions, audio recordings. Diane's presentation began with a simple title slide, "The Real Marcus Sterling, A Study in Corporate Corruption." The room went silent. Sterling froze halfway to the stage, his face draining of color. The presentation was methodical, devastating. Each slide built on the last, showing the web of illegal activity with the precision of a surgical strike. Money laundering through Chinese manufacturing, bribery of city officials, complete with recorded phone calls. The construction worker's death linked directly to Sterling's cost-cutting measures. And then, the finale. The emails about Diane's disbarment. Her name appeared on screen along with the evidence of Sterling's orchestrated campaign to destroy her. "That's the woman from the legal clinic," someone whispered, loud enough to carry. "Diane Milner. She was disbarred for ethics violations." "No," another voice corrected. "She was framed. Did you not see the emails?" The presentation continued. 10 minutes of damning evidence, narrated by Diane's own voice in a recording she'd made the night before. Clear, professional, merciless. When it ended, the lights came up. Sterling stood in the center of the ballroom, exposed and alone. People had moved away from him instinctively, leaving him isolated in a circle of empty floor. "This is fabricated," he shouted, his voice cracking. "Lies. Someone is trying to—" "The SEC received copies this morning," Diane's voice rang out. She stood at her table, and every eye turned to her. So did the FBI's Financial Crimes Division, the Justice Department, and approximately 50 journalists. "You're finished, Sterling." He turned toward her, face contorted with rage and panic. You're nothing. A disbarred lawyer playing dress-up with gangsters. I'm the woman whose life you destroyed." Diane moved forward, and people parted for her like water. "The woman you stole from. The woman you thought you could erase." She reached the circle where Sterling stood, isolated and trembling. "You took my career, my reputation, my future." She stopped just outside his reach. "You left me kneeling in the rain for a single dollar because you could. Because crushing people beneath you made you feel powerful." Security was moving toward them now, but Jungseok's people were faster, quietly blocking the exits. No one was leaving. "How does it feel?" Diane asked quietly. "To have everything taken in front of people who once admired you? To be exposed for what you really are?" Sterling lunged for her. He didn't make it 3 steps. Jungseok materialized from the crowd, his hand closing around Sterling's throat with surgical precision. The businessman's feet left the ground briefly before Jungseok set him down, forcing him to his knees with pressure that looked effortless. "You tried to kill her," Jungseok said, his voice carrying in the silent ballroom. "You sent men to my home. You thought you were untouchable." He released Sterling, letting him collapse onto the marble floor. "You thought wrong." Police sirens wailed outside. Real police, not the ones Sterling had bought. Federal agents poured through the doors Kwan had carefully left accessible. Sterling was still kneeling when they reached him, his tuxedo rumpled, his face twisted with disbelief. The last image anyone would have of the man of the year. The aftermath moved with bureaucratic inevitability. Sterling was arrested that night, charged with enough federal crimes to ensure he'd never see freedom again. His assets were frozen. His company's stock collapsed. The merger deal evaporated. Within a week, it was as if his empire had never existed. Diane watched it all from the penthouse, tracking news coverage on the screens in Jungseok's office. Every channel showed the same story, the fall of Marcus Sterling, brought down by evidence compiled by the very woman he'd tried to destroy. Her phone rang constantly. Other lawyers from the legal clinic, apologizing, claiming they'd never believed the accusations. The State Bar Association, tentatively suggesting her disbarment might be reconsidered given the new evidence. She ignored most of them. On the 8th day, an official letter arrived. The Bar Association was prepared to restore her license, retroactive to her original disbarment date. They would issue a public apology. They would ensure she could practice law again. Diane held the letter, reading it 3 times. "Your vindication," Jungseok said, watching from his desk. "Everything you wanted. Is it? That's what you have to decide." She set the letter down, looking at him, this dangerous man who'd saved her, taught her, transformed her into something she barely recognized. "They're offering me my old life back," she said. "The one where I follow the rules and trust the system and believe justice will prevail if I just work hard enough. And you know that's a lie now." "I know that's a beautiful fiction." Diane moved to the window, looking out at the city that had once chewed her up and spit her out. The system works for people who can afford to make it work. Everyone else just suffers. "So what will you do?" She turned back to him. "What are you offering?" Jungseok stood, moving around his desk with that predatory grace. "A partnership. You continue doing what you've been doing, finding legal solutions to problems that can't be solved in courtrooms. I provide resources, protection, everything you need. You want me to be your lawyer. I want you to be my equal." He stopped in front of her. "Your mind is as dangerous as any weapon I possess. More dangerous, because people underestimate it. Together, we could reshape this city. Into what? Something closer to just." His smile was slight. "We're both monsters now, Diane. The question is whether we use that to help people, or just to survive." She thought about Sterling, about all the people he'd crushed over the years, about how the law had protected him until someone was willing to fight outside its boundaries. She thought about the woman kneeling in the rain, reaching for a stolen dollar. That woman was dead. Diane had killed her herself. "I have conditions," she said. "Name them. We don't hurt innocents. We don't become what Sterling was." "Agreed. And I keep my autonomy. I'm not your employee. I'm your partner, like you said. Jungseok extended his hand. Equal shares in everything. Equal say in all decisions. Diane looked at his hand, scarred, dangerous, offering her everything the legitimate world had denied. She took it. His grip was firm, sealing a deal that would have horrified her law school professors. But they'd never kneeled in the rain. They'd never watched their careers burn because someone powerful decided they were inconvenient. Welcome to the empire, Jungseok said. What empire? The one we're going to build. He released her hand but didn't step back. Together. Diane smiled, and it felt sharp, felt dangerous, felt right. Let's get started. 6 months later, the penthouse had been completely rebuilt, its wounds from the attack erased as if they'd never existed. But the scars remained where they mattered in the hearts of the people who'd survived. Diane sat in her office, reviewing case files. Not for Jungseok's enemies this time, but for people who needed help the legal system couldn't provide. A woman fighting a corporation that had poisoned her neighborhood's water. A family whose immigrant status was being weaponized by an abusive landlord. Cases the old Diane would have taken pro bono. Cases the new Diane handled with every resource Jungseok's empire could provide. Her phone buzzed. A message from Minseo. Client, arriving in 10 minutes. Young woman, domestic violence situation. No protective order because ex-husband is a police sergeant. Diane stood, straightening her suit designer now, but worn like armor rather than costume. She caught her reflection in the window. She looked like someone who belonged in this world. More importantly, she looked like someone you didn't cross. The door opened. Jungseok entered without knocking, carrying coffee like he always did. Some habits, apparently, were sacred. Busy? He asked. Always. She accepted the cup. You? Senator Morrison is being difficult about the housing development project. I may need your particular skills to persuade him. Legal persuasion or the other kind. Your choice. That's the partnership. Remember? Diane smiled. 6 months ago, she would have insisted on legal channels, on doing things properly. Now she understood that sometimes the proper way was whatever worked. I'll review his financial disclosures, she said. If he's dirty, we use it. If he's clean, we find another angle. And if there's no angle, there's always an angle. She set down her coffee. You taught me that. Jungseok moved closer, and the air between them charged with something unspoken. They'd maintained careful professional distance for months, but the tension was always there, the memory of rain-soaked streets, of rescue and transformation, of becoming something new together. I never thanked you, Diane said quietly. For what? For seeing who I could become, for not treating me like a victim. You were never a victim. His hand touched her face, gentle despite everything those hands had done. You were always a fighter. You just didn't know it yet. The moment stretched, balanced on a knife's edge between professional and something else entirely. Then her office phone buzzed. The client was here. Jungseok stepped back, the moment passing but not forgotten. Go. Do what you do best. Which is terrify people with legal documents. His smile was genuine. It's remarkably effective. Diane grabbed her tablet and headed for the conference room, feeling the weight of her new life settle comfortably around her shoulders. No longer the idealistic law student who believed in simple justice, no longer the broken woman kneeling in the rain. She was something else now. Something dangerous and necessary in a world where the law protected the powerful and crushed everyone else. A monster, maybe, but the kind of monster that scared other monsters. And in this city, in this life, that was enough. The client was waiting young, terrified, bruised in places makeup couldn't quite hide. Diane recognized the look. She'd worn it herself, in different ways. Thank you for seeing me, the woman whispered. I didn't know where else to go. The police won't help because he's one of them. And lawyers say there's nothing they can do without proof. But he's going to kill me. I know he is. Stop. Diane's voice was firm but not unkind. She sat across from the woman, her expression calm. You came to the right place, and I promise you, he's not going to touch you again. How can you promise that? Diane smiled, and it was the smile Jungseok had taught her, the one that held no warmth but infinite promise. Because I have resources your ex-husband can't imagine, and I know exactly how to make dangerous men understand consequences. She opened her tablet. Now, tell me everything. Don't leave anything out, and don't worry about what's legal or provable. Just tell me the truth. What are you going to do? Whatever it takes, Diane said simply. That's what we do here. Whatever it takes. Outside the conference room, through the glass walls, the city sprawled in all its corrupt glory. Somewhere out there, Marcus Sterling sat in a federal prison cell, probably still wondering how a homeless woman had destroyed his empire. Somewhere out there, other Sterlings were crushing other victims, confident in their power and untouchability. But now, those victims had somewhere to turn. They had Diane Milner, and behind her, the empire she and Jungseok had built from rain-soaked streets and stolen dollars and the ashes of everything they used to be. It wasn't the life she'd planned, but it was the life she'd earned, and she was just getting started.